Okay, so welcome everybody. Today we have James Fox with us. So James is the head of operations of Valeo Foods in the UK. So another UK guest. So welcome, James. Thank you so much for being here. These sessions, honestly, are so important to our members because it really, really helps people when they see and hear the stories of somebody who's been successful, worked their way up the corporate ladder or whatever direction that they've been
Yeah,
in, but really understand their path, the fears and doubts that they might have had to overcome, any kind of lessons, tips, things, like from your
yeah,
mentors that you've learned. It really helps to hear them stories because people can then really reflect and see themselves and see patterns that might be, that's standing out to them that they need to bring into their self-awareness. It really helps them do
yeah,
that. So our
yeah.
intention is to really help people with their own self-leadership so they can naturally become better leaders themselves. So we appreciate you so much for taking the time to do this, and it
Mm.
really is a massive help. So to get started, Nigel is going to read your bio.
Yeah, again, thanks, James, for this. Really appreciate you taking the time. So, James Fox is head of operations for Valeo Foods UK, bringing 28 plus years of leadership across engineering and manufacturing. He began his career as a production engineer in Sheffield, UK, and has since led operations across food, drink, dairy, brewing, medical, and industrial products. James spent a significant portion of his career in the brewing industry with Carlsberg and Heineken, helping deliver performance through major change and investment. Today, he provides operational leadership across 7 UK factories and 1,000 plus colleagues producing confectionery puddings and honey products for the UK and international customers.
Nice. That's an
Great bio.
impressive bio, James.
Thank you, and thanks for having me today. It's nice to have this opportunity. Interesting, actually. I know you're in Canada at the moment, aren't you?
Yeah.
We make a lot of our licorice. We sell British licorice to the Canadian market quite a lot, actually.
Wow.
Oh,
Yeah.
I didn't realize
So
that.
that's one of our big export products. Yeah.
Oh,
Well, we actually see British products. We get this product in Walmart over, and it has like the Union Jack on it, and it says
Yeah.
manufactured. And I think that
that
could be
could
one of
be.
the do like
We
a
need to look
licorice and
for
some
we need to
confectionery.
look for the licorice then,
We do.
because the chocolate is amazing. So what Walmart, I'm plugging Walmart in because I was there a long time, and I know Kuljeet's still at Walmart as well. But they do a British import chocolate,
Yeah.
and it's the best that you can get over here. It's amazing.
Right.
So yeah,
Right.
there's still nothing that compares to British chocolate. So I can imagine that you get some really good benefits from there to take home. So,
Too many sweets. Yeah. Yeah,
well,
I have to watch I've developed a sweet tooth in recent years, that's for sure. Yeah.
so it's from the brewery world of having too much beer to then
To the
go to
confectionery
the
Yes.
world.
confectionery world.
Yeah.
Too much sweet.
Yes.
What two really good problems to have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
okay, so we'll get started, and I want to kind of start with the same question that we always start with all of our guests, and just an open question. But if you can walk us through your career, so where you started off when you were younger, and the path that took, and tell us along the way, was that the path that you envisioned when you started off, or did it kind of have different turns to what you originally planned?
Yeah. I mean, if I go way back, when before I got into my career, I envisaged that I was going to go into construction because I had family and cousins that I used to look up to, and I used to think, oh, I'd love to be like them and go into construction. And then I spent during summer holidays and stuff, I used to work on building sites, and I realized actually it's not what I wanted to do. And so then I changed tact and really thought about, and I think it's really important to think about what is it you enjoy. And I enjoy understanding how things work. So at home I'd be repairing the lawnmower, or I'd be, making something to help my dad, or whatever. And I realized actually it was engineering. At the heart of it, it was engineering is what I enjoyed. So I studied engineering, and then I got into a job as a production engineer in Sheffield. It was a small family company, relatively small, sort of less than 10 million turnover, less than 100 people. And at times I did think when I was in the job, I actually thought I wish I was in a corporate role in terms of a program, and think I used to see other people that were on a graduate program or something. But on reflection, I think it was so useful to be in that company because I had to, you didn't have the resources and the support that some of these big companies had. That you were sort of exposed to a lot more. So whether it be boardroom to shop floor, you had to learn how to deal with these people, customers, suppliers, all of this, which I wouldn't have got exposed to if I was in a big corporate. And looking back on it, I spent about 6 years, I think, there, doing different jobs, but it was fantastic grounding. In that role. Then it was time that I needed there was nowhere else to grow into, so I had to look outside. And it was actually quite a difficult step to move from a small company into a corporate world or into a bigger company, because of the jargon and the lingo, and you're going for interviews and they're talking about acronyms that you've never even heard of when you've been in a small company. So that took a while, lots of interviews, lots of sort of reading up, and that's when I made my first step into actually, yeah, I moved into it. It was actually an American-owned company. It was they were called Guardian Industries. They were a float glass manufacturer, one of the biggest in the world, and uh, started there and then gradually moved on from there, I guess. So what I found and what I enjoyed was just, again, because I enjoyed how things worked when I started a new role, I was always genuinely curious about how do things work, genuinely talking to people, because that's, again, from my grounding, I guess, and just from how I am. I love to talk to people and sort of listen and, get the real story on what's happening and how things are made and what the challenges are. And I've taken that throughout my career. Everywhere that I go, a big chunk of my beginnings with a company is to be just a sponge and just to, spend time. In my case, working in factories, spend time on the shop floor, understand, observe, listen, talk to people, and it's put me in really good stead. Every time I've done it, it's worked, and generally every time I've done it, in every move I've made, you know, after a couple of months, I'll get feedback from other people that, oh yeah, we've had positive feedback that you've been on the shop floor and you're listening to people. And for me, it's natural, but it's surprising how many people don't do that type of thing. So I'd really encourage, in any environment, you could be working in retail, or you could work in an office, but having time at the sort of coal face at the front line to understand how the business works, because it's those people that are actually making the money. Generally, the management roles are kind of supportive, aren't they? They're there to provide direction and support and so on, but they're not actually contributing to either manufacturing the products or selling the products to the customer. So I think you have to spend time in those environments and understand what the people are doing day to day. Um, so yeah, and then throughout my career, I spent quite a bit of time in engineering. But once I got a taste for operations, that's sort of what I enjoyed more. So I carried on down that route really, more. Um, I don't know. I just think it feels a bit more exciting in operations rather than engineering. Generally, your phone just rings, or people want to talk to you when there's a problem, not when things are going smoothly. So yeah, that's how I continued, and yeah, and that's where I've stayed. So now I'm fortunate. I'm in a great role where I've got these 7 different factories, and it's nice to apply my experiences and help my factory managers, my teams, to sort of, on my experiences along the way, and sort of help those sides. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love like when you say about diving in and really understanding it, the huge benefit that comes from that is when people are on the shop floor and they actually can trust you straight away because they're like, this person actually cares. about what the
Yeah.
individuals are doing. So even though when you're coming at it from a place of, I genuinely want to learn and I'm like a sponge and I want to understand, that knock-on effect benefit is the real game changer.
Yeah.
That trust that you build with people. So that's amazing. And
Yeah.
we had somebody else on that was 100%. That was his message as well, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The VP in financial services in Walmart, he said the same thing.
Yeah, but I think just like what you touched on then, James, and you just mentioned then about the sponge part, I think that's such a critical part to actually be out there. You mentioned as well about the managers, they're not really getting things over the finish line. They're just moving the chess pieces about.
Yeah.
What a lot of what we try and teach out there is that you really need to be in the trenches with the people. You need to be listening to the
Yeah.
people. We do a big thing on psychological safety where you have to give people the space to admit mistakes, bring ideas to the table, or challenge things that don't feel right to them. So I really
Yeah.
like the point where, and I'm sure, kind of knowing you, James, you're probably still out there now soaking up as much information from any
Yeah.
opportunity that you can get.
Yeah, and you know what? You've just reminded me of an example from just in the last week or so. So I was in one of my factories in the UK. I was walking around with the factory manager. So whenever I visit, we'll have a walk around, we'll talk about, observe things. And whilst I was with him, an operator came up to speak to him and sort of was making a comment about a change in his area that he hadn't been informed about. So then we had a conversation about it, together and said, well, that's it's not very good. Something happening in the operator's environment is not being informed. And the factory manager said, yeah, yes, I agree. I'll follow up with it. And then it was a week later, I was back on the same factory and I was having a walk around and I saw this operator because I remembered him. So I went to check with him. I said, oh, by the way, remember, that thing you raised last week? Did someone come back to you on that? And it really shocked me when they said no. And I was like, really? So, and it's that type of thing that you wouldn't find that out unless you go and so
Yeah.
I said, right, you leave that with me. This back you on that because it was a valid point. So let me help you out here. And that's how you build, I think, sort of that sort of genuine, sort of authentic, supportive, leadership.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Looking at it from an empathy standpoint.
Yeah.
That's
Love it.
amazing.
Yeah.
I want to dive back a little bit into when you first got into your career and what did that look like? Did you like you're an engineer and you kind of went into that first role? But did you kind of get to like were you managing people quickly? Did you kind of start at the bottom and work your way up? And what did that initial piece look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So initially I was managing nobody. I was an engineer. I was looking after, doing drawings and machine programming and fixing machines and things like that. Then I sort of informally became a bit of a sort of managing people. You sort of just by nature of being a member of the management team, but not a manager of a team. I was kind of leaned upon to be an indirect kind of leader, which which actually has its challenges because, for example, I remember there was a foreman. There was a foreman in the factory in Sheffield, who was a good guy, but he was sort of experienced and didn't want anybody to sort of ruin his world about, the factory in his style. And so there were a couple of times when, I had to have a conversation about, well, why are we doing it this way? There was some tough conversations sometimes. Yeah.
I think that's a really good point, that James, and thanks for sharing that because um, we look at kind of two kinds of leadership. One's positional leadership, which is when you have the title and people feel
Yeah.
obliged to kind of follow you. You can influence because you're the VP, director, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And then there's authentic leadership, which is kind of what you spoke about there, where there's no real title to back you up, but you've still got this natural ability to look at something that doesn't feel right and then be able to influence in a way that you get the desired result.
Yeah. And you can do that it doesn't necessarily need to be about a problem, does it? It can be just about sort of generating a bit of team camaraderie to achieve a goal.
Yeah.
Everyone might be the same level, but someone sort of shows a bit of natural leadership or authentic sign of leadership like you're talking about to sort of so actually I think together we could do better than this. That's kind of uh, demonstrating leadership as well, isn't it? Even to your peers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
I've got a question, James. So, leadership in life, we talk a lot about self-awareness, how we notice as thinking, as reaction patterns. Can you share a time when fear, whether it be self-doubt or emotional challenges, showed up for you and kind of how you dealt with them?
We think a lot about, when we think about this question, we think a lot about like
Confidence,
confidence,
public
imposter
speaking,
syndrome,
imposter
public
syndrome.
speaking, yeah, anything like that that was your battle.
I was just, you took the words out of my mouth. I was just going to say, imposter syndrome is something that sort of, I wouldn't say it's impacted me heavily, but there's been times where I've definitely, kind of questioned, when I've, I don't know, probably in the last 10 years, there's probably a couple of roles where significant sort of promotions, and then I'm in it and I'm thinking, oh my God, I don't know if I can do this, or am I good enough for this, and so on. And you do question yourself. And I've certainly definitely been through that. And, I think it's really useful to have somebody to talk to, when you get in those situations. So, which again is actually another challenge when you start a new role, because sometimes, especially if it's a new business, you haven't really even got a circle of trust sometimes at that point. And so I was gonna suggest that as another point actually, that just it's definitely something when you do start a new role. I think it's very important to something on your list to sort of work towards is I need to find some people that I can start to trust and talk to, because otherwise it can be lonely and difficult, especially in a new business. So early on, whenever I start somewhere, I'll be thinking, right, who's catching my eye, or who am I listening to that I think could be a good person to sort of build a rapport with and build maybe a certain level of trust with going forward. But going back to your question, Amy and Nigel, yeah, the imposter syndrome it is difficult. So I can recall talking with my wife. It might be had a really tough day, and you need to talk it out, and she'd remind me of well, how many interview stages did you go through? You
Yeah.
know, you've been through all these. Remember when you achieved all this in your last position? Do you remember when you had that big challenge and you remember this? And you think, oh, yeah. You just need to kind of pinch yourself, think, actually, I can do this. It is a challenge. They've hired me not because I'm perfect, but they've hired me because they think I was the best candidate and because, I've got the right type of background. And it's kind of just telling yourself that, and also reminding yourself that, I told the truth during my interview. I didn't pretend I could do everything. I told them I've got development areas. I told them
Yeah.
this, and so I'll do what I can do,
Yeah.
and I'll do what I can do, and I'm not afraid to put my hand up and say, I need some help with this because this is more challenging than I thought, or I just want to share how I'm going to do it. Even sometimes it's just sharing. Not to say, "Oh, I've got boss, I've got a problem over to you, but to say, I've got a problem, I'm not really sure how to deal with, but I was thinking about going about it this way. What do you think about that? And that's a great way to sort of talk it through.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
We always say to people when we've kind of done the speaking at the university as well, we give exactly that advice, that whenever you're going to a manager with a problem, take a solution with you as well, even though it might not be the
Yes,
solution, just to show that you've thought
absolutely.
about it, to get some ideas and a conversation going. So that just tied in nicely, doesn't it, to what
Yeah,
we
yeah.
teach there.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
You just reminded me of a phrase that, when I'm in that kind of maybe when I'm in a situation where not just imposter syndrome situation, but in a difficult situation where you think, you know, what's the right thing to do, or how are we going to start this big change or this big piece of work or whatever. And I always think to myself, and I tell my team, and sort of it's a bit of a strapline now, that the first step is to take one. Basically,
Yeah.
I love that.
the first step is to take one. So whatever that step is, it might be booking a meeting to have that conversation with your boss about your proposal. It might be putting in your diary to write down your proposal. But whatever it is, it's the first step. And unless you do the first step and you just sit there worrying about it, but yeah, the first step is to take one. I love that.
I'm pitching that.
I know, we're going to take that, James. That's going to be all over LinkedIn next week.
Yeah. Yeah, we're having that one.
We're having that one.
Oh, dear. Okay, amazing. I wanted to dive into how anything that you've learned from others. So, like, we honestly believe that hearing other people's stories and learning from other people is the best way to learn. So, is there ever been a moment in your career where you've been observing somebody else, whether it's been an inspiring example or a challenging, difficult one, but has there ever been a time where observing somebody has fundamentally changed how you would approach something or how you would approach a scenario in how you either lead yourself or lead other people?
I think, I mean, so much, credit to all the leaders I've worked for, to be honest, people, because, the way I am is from what I've learned from so many people, if I'm really, being genuinely honest about it. But I think it's really calling out something maybe that was something I hadn't really recognized is probably a couple of things. One would be, um, the power of sort of and the power of really as a leader going out of your way to sort of um, catch people doing things right and sort of highlight it, and way more than you would naturally do. So I until I saw this lady who managed me for a few years, until I sort of came across her style, um, she would spot, she would so we both see the same thing, so we might see something, but she would call it out and she would say, "That's a great job," or an incremental improvement in performance, she'd sort of shout it out. And it's all about this positive reinforcement. Whereas I might think to myself internally, "Oh, that's quite good. I'll have to look out and see if that continues or something." Whereas I think the power was to do it all the time, to do it as often as possible, because there's that much negative news, if you like, whether it be KPIs or whether it be, what's on the news at the moment. There's a lot of negative news, and we're always talking about the reds or talking about the problems. So that means we have to over sort of amplify the little bits of improvement and the little bit of positives. And I think that's something that, maybe only in the last sort of 6 or 7 years, I've really sort of picked up on, and I really try and do that much more. So I might be the only person in the room that, other people will all have seen the chart, will see like a little improvement, and I might highlight it. I might call it out and say, "Well, it's still an improvement. It's not, we're not hitting the target yet, but it's better than last week. It's better than the week before. So, we're going in the right direction to keep it going." Or, or even to somebody doing a small job that's all part of the wheel of business. I think it's just recognizing those small steps. And the other thing is it makes you feel good.
Yeah.
As in me, as in the person who's passing on the good news, it gives you that sort of positive energy, really, and I think um, I'm going to digress again now. At least it's just reminded me of another thing about
Yeah, do
positive
it.
energy. So
Go
let me
ahead.
just share it. Yeah. So in terms of self-awareness and so on, I when I had some coaching, in the last 10 years, and went really deep on self-awareness. And we got into some examples about, I think I was just explaining. I sat in the coaching session and said, "Oh, how's your day going?" I said, "Oh, it's really tough at the moment, blah, blah, blah." And she said, "Oh, why is it tough? Tell me why it's tough." And anyway, it came to light, it came to sort of my understanding, and I recognized that during times of real pressure and challenge, I would I would naturally sort of become a little bit withdrawn from how I normally am to the business. But that's because I was like, I need to focus on the problem. Yeah. So, but to the wider world, people would think, "Oh, where's James today?" Or haven't seen James much. But it's actually because I'm kind of worrying and focusing on a problem and kind of, spending all my time on it. But also, when again talking with my coach, I learned that the things that made me perform best at work were people engagement, people interaction, listening and getting on the shop floor and doing that. And so I had a double negative. So at the times when I needed my most positive energy to be the strongest I could be, I was locking myself down to focus on the problem, and I wasn't doing the things that gave me positive energy.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting. And exercise as well. So generally during them times of challenge and stress, I'd probably be burning the candle at both ends a little bit. I'd be working longer hours, and then my exercise would drop off because I haven't got time to go to the gym or go for a run because I've got too much work to do. And that was another negative. So I have to really be disciplined, and actually in those times of challenge and stress, which will always be there, I have them now, but now I'll think, right, I've been working on this problem. I've been on this for an hour or so now. I'm gonna I'm going to get away from my desk. I'm going to go and talk to some people about either about the problem or about something different. Go and recognize some good work. Go and do something. It gives me positive energy. I always make sure I don't lose my exercise because that keeps me motivated and energized. Um, and when I look back, I can see how that was a really key thing that I didn't know at the time. Yeah.
I think that story there, James, is amazing.
Yeah,
And I think it's so relevant to so many things. And I think just by default, when you get hit with a problem, you're like, right, everything goes on hold. I have to fix this problem. But to your point, just to the fact that you step away from it and go to the things that give you inspiration and get your mindset
Yeah.
in a problem solving mindset. Or
Yeah.
let's say your go-to is to go speak with the people about anything or the
Yeah.
exercise part. I think it's great because it is so common that people just anchor down.
Well, I think
Yeah.
I was really thinking about that then, and I kind of recognize that in myself a little bit. I think I
Mm.
potentially do that, and it's such a like journey, this self-awareness thing, because you don't
Yeah.
you like that's something that it's difficult to recognize yourself.
Mm.
It does take time, and it takes a lot of real thinking about
Yeah.
exactly who you are and tuning into your emotions, like not sounding too fluffy or whatever. But do you know what I mean? That's
Yeah.
really what it is. So that was a
Yeah.
great
Yeah.
story.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about the next question because I was just like
I've got one.
in that one.
Um, so when you look back on your journey from being in the smaller company to actually where you've achieved now, which habit, mindset, or way of thinking has had the biggest impact on you? Um, and was it something you intentionally built or did it evolve naturally? So I mean, you kind of touched on something there that from a self-awareness standpoint, but what mindset or way of thinking would you say has been the tool that's got you to either when you address situations or to get through situations?
Um,
If there's another one, because I know you mentioned the good one, which is the key one of leaning in and listening to people. I get that that's the key
Yeah,
one
that
I'd
is
pick
good.
up
Yeah.
from it. Is there something else that you would say, like in your kind of frame of mind, that's got you out of the negatives and kept you going?
yeah. I think, I mean, the thing that really springs to mind, I'm trying to think of something else, but I think the thing that springs to mind the most is, in whatever way, just, whether it be about achieving results or about people or whatever, it's about doing the right thing, but it might not be the easy thing. Yeah, because often in roles I've moved into or businesses I work with, the problem has arisen because someone didn't take the hard call. Someone made a decision that was easier to make, but left a trail of problems behind it. I took a shortcut instead of dealing with something. So, and I think that's kind of something we can't always do it because sometimes it requires too much change to sort of undo something. But generally, my mindset would be that we need to do the right thing. You, you know, it might not be the easy thing, and if we can't do it all at once, then let's at least work towards that. So um, I guess an example might be recently we I helped sort of reorganize the leadership structure for one of the factories. Now, over time, it just evolved, and um, but it resulted in one manager having so many direct reports that it was they would never be able to manage the team effectively. It was the scope was too much. And I think it was an example of of that. There'd been a resistance to change because people thought it was too difficult to undo, you know. But we just, I just felt it was really important that we need to do that. And before we made that change, we would never, have improve the results, the engagement, and so on within that factory. So we set a plan out, and it feels like, so much has happened. We sort of started that plan in August last year, implemented it in October, and it was started in January, and now it's fully implemented. And everybody can see the benefit from it. Whereas before, it was probably just seen as a bit too big to tackle. But by breaking it down and thinking, well, this is what we need to get to. So how, and as we got into it, then we started to, you know, it became more achievable, I think. I don't know if that answers your question actually, but the bottom
Yes.
line is, I
Yes.
think the bottom line is just being able to, that's always been, I guess my mindset to do it properly. And there's actually, I was thinking about something similar to this before the call. Actually, I was thinking about the leaders that I've worked for, the managers over the years, and all of them have been very strong, sort of ethical leaders. They were probably been very fortunate. I think there's been three. So out of nearly 30 years, there's three that I can remember that were not, and I didn't work for them very long. So all of them, I worked for them for less than a year. So during that time, I quickly realized, either I couldn't really trust them, they didn't hold themselves accountable, they didn't, do what they say they're going to do, all those types of things. And I just thought that's not for me. And so I moved on. But the rest of them, yeah, I thought, and that's, I think, probably I've learned a lot from those people over the years.
That's amazing.
And that's a great point what you mentioned there, and James, about there were three leaders that your opinion was that they weren't great leaders, so you moved on.
Mhm. Yeah.
So it kind of it it reiterates the point that how important it is to be a good leader or to have a good
Yeah.
leader, to be working for a good leader, because that information, how they lead, cascades down to you and you cascade it down. But if at the top, if that leadership is poor or it's wrong, let's say, then the team underneath eventually it's either going to deplete or they're going to start following bad habits.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I think that it's often quoted, isn't it, that people leave not because so much of money or different. Sometimes people have to move for money because money pays the bills, but often it is often the manager, and just because it's just not working, for whatever reason, and people move on, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this has been an amazing conversation. And you've actually, a lot of the questions that we have, you've answered them naturally within the conversation. So that's amazing. So thank you. Just for a final thought,
Yeah.
if you can leave anything for our members, the members that might feel like they are capable, but they might be holding back for whatever reason. It might be fear, self-doubt, or whatever it is that they're feeling. What's one perspective or one reminder that you wish you'd have heard early on in your journey that could have kind of like, got you a bit further ahead at the beginning?
Good question. Let me have a think. Um,
Throwing this one at you for the last one.
yeah.
But I
No,
guess
it's all right.
if there's any more general, really, if there's just any final thought, advice
Any
in general,
kind of advice for
yeah.
anyone starting on their journey now, if someone's 19, 20-year-old and going out into the big bad world.
But even people that are older and
Yeah,
just
whatever.
got
But
fears,
what advice
doubts.
would you give? Just
Yeah.
if you could give them one nugget of advice, what would that be?
Yeah.
I think you've touched on most of them, to be fair, but
We're trying to
Yeah.
pull that a little bit more out of you, James.
I think, yeah, no, I'm a reflector, you see, so I'm not a naturally sort of shoot from the hip type of guy. So I'm just reflecting, and I think definitely something that I notice in my son as well, actually. So and I sort of encourage him to do this more. Is I think it's really important for young people and everybody and anybody in my team now who are probably 40 plus, most of them, is to be curious, and not be afraid of asking a question, you know, because you might think I'm not going to ask that question because it's a stupid question, and before you know it, somebody else in the room has asked that question that you thought was stupid that actually was actually a really good question.
yeah.
And I'm often that person that I like to. I'm curious, and I'll ask that question. And if I think it's stupid, I'll say this might be a stupid question, but and I'll ask the question because I think there's too many people, I think, that leave might be a meeting room or a chat room or whatever, Teams meeting, and I might speak to them afterwards and say, so what did you think about that? Oh, I didn't really understand that. But
Yeah.
people just are not curious enough. They don't understand, but they, for whatever reason, and I think those people that are curious and that do ask questions, it's recognised because it stands out and it shows. It doesn't show that, oh, why didn't they understand that? It more shows that you're bothered, you're interested, you're passionate to understand how you can contribute. You listen to the meeting, you listen to who's talking. How often you've probably been in meetings yourselves where there'll be a presenter and they'll talk to any questions? Nothing. Not a single question. Well, how well are people listening? Because there must be something that somebody has got a question about and nobody asks a question. So I think that is and I suppose if you don't have a question, especially if early in your career, it might be that just make a comment. So I haven't That was really interesting. I haven't got any questions, but I found this bit really interesting. Again, it's
Yeah.
just showing that it's demonstrating that you actually listened. You're confident to, to make that public, to let people know that you're listening, and that'll give the presenter a real boost as well. And who knows where that'll
Yeah.
lead, because that's what we want, isn't it? People to, we all spend so much time at work. You need to try and, you know, make it enjoyable as much as you can. So getting some positive feedback from anybody is nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a comment to add on that. That was a brilliant way to end it. But I used to be that person for a long time, and it was because I recognize now I kind of fixed it like about 10 years ago. I recognized it. But I was so in my own head, and I was so like scared of speaking up, and I had
Yeah.
a panic about public speaking, and I made it all about me. So I was scared of looking stupid, and I was scared of asking the stupid question. I was scared of people thinking, oh, my voice is wavering. And it was when I recognized it and I flipped it round, and all conversations now, I think about the other person. So it's always about
Yeah.
the other person first. And like you touched on then, that person that's delivering the message, they need to know that they're doing a good job by
Yeah.
you making sure that you understand. So you asking all those stupid questions to get to a point where you understand gives them the biggest confidence boost that they can get, because they've stood there and they've provided
Absolutely.
clarity. And it was that switch that was the big thing that really helped me kind of get over that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's a good way of putting it, Amy. I agree with you. I fully agree. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Well,
Mhm.
honestly,
Thank you,
this has
James.
been honestly a brilliant interview.
Oh, good.
I can't even, and the fact that we've pocketed a little tagline.
We've got LinkedIn for all of them.
Yeah, that was brilliant. So
I didn't make
honestly,
it up. I don't know where it came from, but I use it. But maybe somebody else invented it. I don't know.
oh yeah,
You have to
it
know.
sounds like a legacy statement for when you've gone that one. So, but honestly, James, thank you so much. Like this type of learning and the lessons that you've shared are just incredible. Like, and it's brilliant for us. Like, I pick little tips up along the way, but for our members, it is so good. It is really good learning, and we really appreciate you coming on, sharing your story, and being vulnerable about your career path. We appreciate it so much.
Yeah.
No, you're absolutely welcome. It's been really nice to talk to you. And yeah, thanks for inviting me.
Okay, amazing.
I'm gonna stop.